Imagine walking into your job every day, giving your best, and still being treated like you're invisible. This was exactly the reality for Sarah, a dedicated and hard-working black woman who had been working at a local office for nearly 3 years. But everything changed one fateful afternoon when her manager, Mr. Thompson, took things too far. The tension in the office was palpable as Sarah tried her best to keep her composure, unaware that a single phone call would turn the tide in a way no one expected. It all started when Sarah noticed something strange. She had been doing the same tasks for months, but recently, her manager, Mr. Thompson, had been increasingly dismissive. He'd make little remarks that weren't just condescending but openly racist. At first, Sarah tried to brush it off. She thought maybe he was just having a bad day. But soon, these comments became more frequent, and she could no longer pretend it wasn't happening. One day, Sarah was called into Mr. Thompson's office. Her heart sank when she saw the way he looked at her as though she were some sort of inconvenience. He started asking her to do tasks outside of her usual responsibilities, ones that no one else in the office was asked to do. And when she hesitated, his words cut deeper than usual. "It's not like you're busy with anything important," he said. Sarah, shocked, stood there, trying to process his blatant racism. How could a man she had respected for so long turn into someone so cruel? She bit her lip, holding back the tears, trying to find the strength to stay calm. As she returned to her desk, a sense of anger and frustration began to bubble up inside her. But she knew she had to do something. Sarah wasn't the type of person to let things slide, not when her dignity was on the line. After a few moments of reflection, she took out her phone and dialed the number of her best friend, Mia. Mia had always been her sounding board, the one person Sarah could trust when things went sideways. She needed advice and she needed it fast. Mia answered the phone almost immediately, sensing Sarah's distress. "What's going on?" Mia asked. Sarah explained the situation, recounting the degrading words Mr. Thompson had said. Mia's voice tightened with concern. "You can't let him get away with this, Sarah. You have rights." But Sarah hesitated. She wasn't sure how to approach it. The office environment was toxic, and she feared that taking any kind of action would only make things worse. That's when Mia suggested something unexpected. "Have you thought about documenting everything? Record it. And then. You know who to call," Mia said. Sarah wasn't sure at first, but the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. She had to protect herself. She had to expose what was really going on. But little did she know, that decision would set off a chain of events that no one in that office could have predicted. The very next day, Sarah kept her phone in her pocket, recording the conversation as she spoke with Mr. Thompson. She knew this was a risky move, but the evidence would speak for itself. Mr. Thompson began his usual routine, making snide comments about her work ethic, calling her into his office with no real explanation. But this time, Sarah had a plan. As the conversation grew more heated, she turned on her phone's recorder, capturing every degrading word. But things escalated quickly. Mr. Thompson noticed something was off. "What's that noise? Are you recording me?" he snapped. Sarah froze for a second, but then something amazing happened. Rather than backing down, Sarah calmly replied, "I'm just making sure everything is on record. If you're going to continue with these comments, I want to have proof." The silence that followed was thick with tension. Mr. Thompson's face turned red with embarrassment, but Sarah didn't flinch. Her phone call with Mia had given her the courage she needed to stand her ground. Then, in a shocking twist, Sarah's phone rang. It was an unknown number. Sarah answered it, wondering who it could be. On the other end, a voice she didn't recognize said, "Is this Sarah? I'm from HR. We've received a report about inappropriate behavior from Mr. Thompson. Can you meet us in the conference room in 10 minutes? Sarah was stunned. How did HR know about the situation? Had someone else spoken up? It didn't matter. Sarah knew what she had to do. Within minutes, Sarah found herself sitting in front of the HR team. They had already listened to the recording she made, and it was clear that Mr. Thompson had crossed a line. The HR manager turned to Sarah with a look of sincerity. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We're going to take immediate action." Just as Sarah thought she was about to breathe a sigh of relief, Mr. Thompson walked into the room, his face pale with realization. The HR manager turned to him and said, "Mr. Thompson, effective immediately, you are being placed on administrative leave pending further investigation into your conduct." The power had shifted. Sarah had done what so many people were afraid to do. She had stood up for herself. And in the end, she had brought down the very person who had tried to make her feel small. The office wasn't the same after that day. Mr. Thompson was eventually let go, and Sarah's courage sparked a ripple effect throughout the company. More people came forward with their own stories, and the workplace culture began to change. In the weeks that followed, Sarah became a voice for others who had been silenced by fear. She wasn't just a victim of racism anymore, she was a symbol of strength and resilience. Her phone call, the one that had started as a cry for help, had become the turning point in an entire office's fight for justice. If there's anything to take away from Sarah's story, it's that speaking up, even when it seems impossible, can change everything. Don't let anyone make you feel invisible, and always remember that you have the power to make your voice heard. It might just be the phone call that changes your life.